there are thousands of trees planted in the fields, and then, as you recede towards the horizon, the forest. Everything that the king could see, he controlled. I talked to the landscape designer Monica Luengo about Philip II's genuine passion for horticulture.
He loved plants, and here he had a huge collection. He could afford it.
And these were plants that were coming in from the Americas, were they?
Of course, most probably you will have here tomatoes that, you know, when they arrived, were first used as ornamental plants.
So this was a collection, a sort of library of these new plants coming in.
Quite experimental. He had tulips that were quite exotic at the time, that came from Turkey, and he had all kind of small carnations, irises, huge variety, huge.
How is modern Spain, through its designers and through its garden makers, how is it developing?
Our second half of the 20th century with Franco's regime was really not very exciting in an artistic and cultural sense. And then suddenly everything was open. Everything was new for us. So we were all like, discovering new worlds, no? And we were so receptive to everything.
Today, El Escorial remains the most potent symbol of the Spanish monarchy and empire at the height of its powers. Like all monarchs of the period, Philip moved around all the time between his various palaces, which meant he never spent very much time here at El Escorial, but he did come here to die. And as he lay in his small bed, on one side he had a window that meant he could look out into the basilica and hear Mass, and on the other side there was this window here. So as he lay dying, he could look out across to the garden and the landscape that he had made. Philip built El Escorial here, primarily because of the abundant supply of granite, and the landscape is still dotted with spectacular boulders. I'm setting off now to explore more of this huge central part of Spain. I'm heading to Madrid, before then setting out to visit three very different regions: Extremadura, Castilla y León, and Castilla-La Mancha. And after visiting Toledo in Castilla-La Mancha, I'm going to travel to Valencia on the Mediterranean coast. On my way to Madrid, I'm making a small detour amongst this vast wooded plateau, because I want to visit a private garden that's situated at the end of a long driveway flanked by umbrella pines and home oaks. As well as the fascination of seeing an estate and a nice garden, the really interesting thing for me is that the owner, who has lived here for most of a very long life, has agreed to talk to me and can tell me how not just this garden has evolved and changed, but also how modern Spanish gardens have adapted during her lifetime. The approach to the house is formal, with low hedges, lots of symmetry, and flower-filled urns. Although this part of Spain is known for its extreme temperatures and often suffers terrible droughts, the garden is a richly green oasis, and the heavily watered lawn will be at home in an English country house. But there are also classical and Islamic influences, with a water feature perfectly framed by Moorish arches. It's clearly an immaculately tended, much-loved garden. And the owner, Puro Urquijo, told me its story. When did you first come here?
In 1957, because my late husband inherited the house from his parents.
And was the garden here then, when you first came?
Well, there was a garden. There was a French garden, which probably was much prettier.